Hi guys, welcome back to J2W tutorial. This is the 16th video tutorial of J2W. So the previous discussion we had different types of statement object. One is statement interface and the prepared statement interface. We have seen the difference for both of them. And now in this discussion we are going to discuss about transaction management. So we're supposed to discuss about the metadata. Let's keep it in the last and let me complete uh, the programming flows first, and later we can discuss about metadata details. So the transaction management. What is the transaction management? So if you see the previous programs, the code, what are the code we wrote in previous examples. So we are nowhere we are actually handling any transaction. Suppose if this particular transaction gets succeed, a transaction it means a set of operations. Suppose if you are doing any select or insert any operations, if you are doing, that's called as a transaction. Suppose if you consider these as a DB, this is your DB, and this is your Java application with JDBC API. And consider this is your database. So whenever you're performing any operation, suppose if you're performing any insert or update or any delete operation, these are each and every operation is called as a transaction. Let's assume this is your Java application, and this particular Java application need to perform some insert queries in database. So some set of insert queries. Suppose if this Java application need to insert 5 insert queries at the same time, and we need to have a single program to do that. So let me put it in diagram. So what this Java application particularly doing, it's actually inserting records. Insert query 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Suppose this Java application actually doing insert queries, 5 insert queries at the same time in the database, and these insert queries are like this. Suppose in our example we have insert queries like insert into products table values, and we will be giving all the values, right? Likewise we'll be having 5 lines of a statement out execute update queries, and 5 need to be executed. And my requirement is like I need, if the 5 records to be inserted, or if it's something fails, means it should not insert any record. So it's not like I'm not expecting any partial insert. Suppose if in my case, suppose there are a lot of cases, like if one registration form if you take, and when your the DEV record is inserting, at that time we'll be expecting we need to insert user details along with the address details along with this. Suppose we have 2 different tables. Suppose these 3 fields, suppose if you consider these is about user details, and the rest of 2 records is about the address details of that particular user. The color is not coming. I don't know why it painted crazily. Suppose these user details, and these details are user address details. So my requirement is like, if the insertion, these 5 insert queries are executing, I just need all 5 records to be inserted. Suppose this user details are inserted in user table, and this user details, this address details are stored in address table. Two different tables are there. So my intention is to insert the records. If it is 5 records are inserted, that is fine. If something got broken in between, so don't insert any record. So I don't want to maintain the partial details of any user. I just want to maintain the whole details of each user. So for that reason, my requirement is to insert all the queries, or if something got failed all the queries. Don't even insert one of the query even. I don't want to insert any query out of 5. So that's my requirement. What will happen if you're using the similar program, whatever the program you have here, if you're having 10 insert queries, like 5 insert queries, whatever, with this statement at execute update with the same code, this will not work out. What will happen is, if something when the cursor is running out third query, if some network issues came or some other technical issues came, so that time what will happen is program is actually failed to execute, and what will happen is these three records got inserted in database, and the rest of the 2 are not inserted because of the network failure. To avoid that, we have this transaction management. What this transaction management will do is, we just need to have a control. Whenever this transaction is started, whenever we are actually begin the transaction, means whenever the connection is established, that time itself will make a transaction in our control. Once it's kind of we are forcibly telling start transaction. So once all the queries got executed, then at the end we'll be telling end transaction. So these are we're going to indicate the Java program. Whenever this transaction, whole transaction got succeed, then only you just need to commit the code. If transaction is ended, then you just need to commit the records in DB. Otherwise, if something got broken in between, suppose if third row insertion is failed or second row insertion got failed, then you just do a rollback. So these about the transaction management. So if you're performing set of operations in a DB, and if you want all the insertion queries or all the queries whatever you gave should be executed, and if something got failed, you don't want to insert the rest of the records or not even the other records, you just need to close the connection, and you just need to roll back all the previous records whatever partially inserted. So these things we can handle it using transaction management. In JDBC, we have provided a feature called as, for transaction management, auto commit false. So this particular auto commit comes from connection object. So by default, if you don't set any auto commit method, if you don't call this method, so by default this will be set to true. That is the reason we, even if you're in our programming, if you don't mention this auto commit true and all, these consider as connection dot auto commit as true. By default, what will happen is connection dot set auto commit is true. Even if you mention it or if you don't mention it, this is actually by default it's a true. If you want to make it manually, then you have to make it to false. If you want to make it false, then you have to declare this statement. Otherwise, by default it's a true. So with this, what will happen is, if you're making connection dot set auto commit to false, then you have to commit your own transaction. Otherwise, the data will be not saved in the database. The transaction will not be ended. So if you want to make this set auto commit to false, then at the end you need to make a commit. If something exception came, then you have to roll back the transaction. That's how you can perform a transaction management in JDBC. Let's go to the real-time example and we can implement. So I just created a transaction management class. Let me add a main method. So in main method, what I'm doing is just need to have a try catch dot print stack trace, and now we have to follow the JDBC steps. The first step will be load driver class. The second step will be create connection object, and the third step will be create statement object, and last step will be close connection. So I don't want to waste the time here. I'm just copying this code for usability. I'm just copying the driver loading class for name of driver class, and creating connection object, and the create statement object, and last step will be closing connection. I think I haven't coded there, but make sure it is an important step. So these are all the standard 4 steps of JDBC, and now our intention is to perform set of insert operations. At the end, we need to commit the transaction. Let me have a set of insert queries. Let me get those insert queries from here. So for now, I don't want to keep this value. Let me put this insert query alone. I don't want the results for now. So what I'm doing is I'm putting multiple insert queries. The what products we have so far, it's only pen we have. So I can insert a pencil and other things. Pencil is not there, and other one is 1003. I'll be giving laptop. It's 5 quantity required, and each one will cost 10,000 each. So what I'm doing is I'm actually performing insert queries of multiple queries. Let me have 2 queries here. You can have a number of queries as you wish, but let me have 2 queries here for time being. So what I'm doing is I'm just created a class, connection class, and I'm just creating statement object and passing multiple execute operations. In our case, if you execute this application, there is no problem until unless there is no issue came. Sometimes if first insert query got inserted, and when second insert query is running, that time network got failed. So some network connectivity got failed, and that time this query will not execute. So my intention is to, if insertion happen, execute for both. If insertion fails, don't execute for both. For that, what I'm doing is connection dot set auto commit to false. By default it's a true. I'm just setting it to false. At the end, before closing the connection, after executing all the queries, what I'm doing is I'm just making commit of it. So now we can able to perform multiple insertion queries within this transaction. So where the transaction begins, so whenever you're creating object and whenever you're performing any of begins here, and once you commit, transaction ends here. So these are you can able to transaction ends here. So these are you can able to perform transaction based operations. And let me run this code. So we haven't put any sys out, so that's the reason it's not printed anything. So let me go to SQL and check the results. See, the PCL and laptop got printed. Sorry guys, I didn't put any sys out, that is the reason you're not getting any results here. That is, so we just verified in DB, the PC, pencil and the laptop got inserted in database. So that's how you can able to manage the transactions. And if some issue came, suppose if some issue came and you don't want to, if some this before executing this transaction, before committing this transaction, if some exception came, that case you can able to use a method called as rollback. So probably you need to declare this class outside this try catch so that you can able to let me keep these two lines outside of try catch or some other try catch, or let me have this reference alone outside. So what I'm doing is connection object, I'm setting it to null. Inside the try class, I'm assigning that value. There's no difference. And whenever this insertion is happening, in between some exception came, you don't want to insert this record. And even if some record got inserted, you just want to revert those operations. Suppose if you put so many SQL operations here, you don't want to commit those transactions, you just want to revert it. For that, what you will do is, in exception block, in between some exception came means, you just need to roll back it, right? You just need to do connection dot rollback. So before doing that, you should make sure whether this object is null or not, because we initialize this object as null here. For that, you just need to check con not equal to null, then only you can roll back this object. Again, it is also expecting the try catch blocks. You should surround it. So that's how you can able to manage your transactions. So what will happen is, it will come to the try block, it will create a connection object, and it will set the auto commit to false. If all the operations got succeed without any exception, it will simply commit the code. Commit the transactions means all the record got inserted, it will actually commit the transaction, DB transaction. If some between any insert query got failed, like how we mentioned here, if any insert query got failed out of these insert queries, you can have n number of queries here, not only two, you can have n number of queries. So out of these, suppose the transaction comes here and if the cursor comes here, if here some network fails, so what will happen is, it will actually come out to the exception block. In exception block, it will check for the connection is not null, because it's already initialized here and it's not null. Then it will actually do rollback, means whatever the insertion happens, all these insertions will be rollbacked. It won't be, the data won't be available in database. Then the program will terminate. So that's a transaction management. We can do it using set auto commit to false and commit and rollback methods. That's it, guys. The next tutorial we're going to discuss about the batch processing. So how to perform, how to prepare a batch and how to perform batch operations at a single execution. Instead of here we are doing execute update for several times, right? So instead of doing these many times execute update, I just want to have a set of queries with me, and I just want to perform a batch operation. Let's discuss in next tutorial. Thanks guys, thanks for watching.